Okay, so we've talked about how the National Weather Service actually is a branch of the NOAA, so the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And the National Weather Service has many things underneath it. Among them are what they call the weather forecast offices that report directly to the National Weather Service. And the Weather Forecast offices ultimately received these forecasts, I believe, from the National Center for Environmental Prediction. And these forecasts, these numeric forecasts basically, then are reviewed by folks at the National Weather Forecast Office. And then they kind of massage the data, consider the forecasts, and then without a whole lot of time lag, I would imagine, then they put forth or disseminate this information to folks like we watch the Weather Channel, folks like the local newspaper people. Okay, so the weather forecast offices are a branch of the National Weather Service. Speaking of the National Weather Service, here is a person that most likely works at one of the branches of the National Weather Service. And doesn't she look happy? So, we talked about numerical weather forecasting, and there are a few other ways of forecasting the weather other than using these models and putting initial conditions into them and that sort of thing, using computers. Actually, a few of these do use computers, but for instance, a climatology forecast is simply making a prediction of what the weather is going to be based upon the climate associated with a particular region. Now remember, climates are established with like 30-year averages of atmospheric conditions. So in other words, a climatology forecast would be, like this example says, we could predict that we're going to have cold temperatures and snow in the month of December in our region. And that's a climatology forecast. Remember that, we're going to talk about skill here in a minute, and skill actually is related to our ability to forecast the weather or predict the weather, something along the lines of better than a climatologic forecast could do. Persistence forecasting is actually something that a lot of us can employ and maybe could employ depending upon what part of the world you live in. If somebody persists, then that means they keep at it, they keep at it, they keep at it. Persistence forecasting is the weather just keeps at it, keeps at it, keeps at it. The weather persists or continues to be the same as it is today. It will be tomorrow, it will be the next day. For instance, California, the song goes, "It never rains in Southern California." So persistence forecast there would be that it won't rain tomorrow. Our forecast tomorrow is that it will not rain. It didn't rain today, it didn't rain the day before. Persistence forecasting. So again, you don't need any computers or anything like that to kind of apply for persistence forecasting. And depending upon the part of the country you live in, if you're not under the influence of weather patterns that tend to change, it works pretty well. The analog approach, as I understand it, would involve a computer. Because in the analog approach, what you're looking for your particular location, an analogous day in history. And once you find that analogous day, what the analog approach says is that what the weather conditions that did occur following your analogous day is going to be the weather that is going to occur tomorrow. Okay, so that's the analog approach. And like I said, I think it really would require using a computer to find that analogous day. Trend forecasting makes use of some of the things that we've talked earlier in this course. The fact that we, in the Ferrel cell and the mid-latitudes, are under the influence of what we call the mid-latitude westerlies. And so the weather systems tend to have a westerly trajectory. They come from the west in our region. And so trend forecasting makes use of things like that, where we consider where the weather patterns are going to go. Kind of related to trend forecasting is something called nowcasting. And it's an application, like the slide says, of trend forecasting in a short time in the future. So trend forecasting actually is something that someone at the last minute, whether people can apply to their forecast and kind of make their forecast, perhaps their numerical forecast, just a little bit better. So this is a slide to show you, of course, some severe weather. Looks like a tornado. Here's a wall cloud right here. And this is just to kind of remind you that all types of forecasting, it is very hard to predict what these small-scale weather events are going to, where they're going to occur for sure and when. This is actually associated with the climatological approach, the climatology forecast, where we kind of, based upon the 30-year history of climate data, we predict what the weather is going to be like, or certain aspects of the weather. In this case, probability of a white crystal.